Episode 23, Wendigos in Appalachia. Hey y'all, I'm Heather, and this is Poisoned Appalachia, the dark side of Appalachia. As always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my last episode on the fast food killer. What an awful human. I'm glad they caught him before he struck again. Did y'all have a good new year? I never do anything exciting, or anything ever, really. I just don't have an exciting life. As I said in my last episode, I have plans for the upcoming year, though. I really want to grow this podcast. That's my big focus. And then I would like to start running again. So I think both of those are doable. Today's episode is about the Wendigo, or as some people call them, skinwalkers. But skinwalkers are actually a different creature, although people seem to combine them a lot. I'll try to cover them both here. I've tossed back and forth, though, in my mind about this because I don't think it's necessarily Appalachian. However, it seems there's a lot of mention of them in Appalachia, so I decided to cover them here. Let's find out about them and find out if either of them are Appalachian. If you're on TikTok, supposed sightings of skinwalkers are on there all the time. I'm doubtful what they're seeing is that, but they've become quite popular in our culture lately, it seems. The Wendigo is a Native American spirit. As I said in my Cherokee Myths and Legends episode, I do these in honor and not as appropriation. Although I do feel like a lot of the people, especially on TikTok, appropriate this legend. So if you're Native and this offends you, please let me know. But let's get started here with the Wendigo. According to Wikipedia, a Wendigo is a mythological creature or evil spirit originating from Algonquin folklore. The concept of the Wendigo has been widely used in literature and other works of art, such as social commentary and horror fiction. The Wendigo is often said to be a malevolent spirit, sometimes depicted as a creature with human-like characteristics which possess humans. It's said to cause its victims a feeling of insatiable hunger, the desire to eat other humans, and the propensity to commit murder. In some representations, the Wendigo is described as a giant humanoid with a heart of ice whose approach is signaled by a foul stench or sudden unreasonable chill. Also, the Wikipedia definition of a skinwalker says, in Navajo culture, a skinwalker, also known as, please forgive me if I don't pronounce this right, Naudalushi, it's a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. This term is never used for healers. The Ye Naudalushi, translating to by means of it, it goes on all fours, is one of the types of skinwalkers with Navajo beliefs. These witches are seen as the antithesis of Navajo values, performing malevolent ceremonies and using manipulative magic in stark contrast to the beneficial works of medicine people. The legend of skinwalkers is deeply embedded in Navajo tradition and rarely discussed with outsiders. The reticence is partially due to cultural taboos and a lack of contextual understanding by non-Navajos. Stories often depict skinwalkers using their powers for evil, and they're considered a source of fear and mystery within Navajo communities. Traditional accounts describe them as powerful sorcerers who, after engaging in various nefarious acts, gain the ability to transform into animals at will. So clearly two different creatures, but like I said, people seem to get them confused. Now I see these videos all the time where an animal's acting odd and they're like, oh, it's a Wendigo, or oh, it's a skinwalker. No, it's not. Sometimes animals are just weird. But, so which are in Appalachia? Neither? Both? I don't know. Let's look into it and try to figure it all out. The first time I remember reading or hearing about the Wendigo was in Stephen King's Pet Sematary, which I read when I was 11 or so. Scared me to death. But why was I even reading Stephen King at 11? I was a weird kid, and it was a cultural thing. I think everybody in my generation grew up with Stephen King. The Wendigo is a creature sometimes referred to as an evil spirit that is said to be 15 feet tall with a body that is thin, with skin pulled so tight that its bones are visible. Many native legends view it as a spirit of greed, gluttony, and insatiable hunger. It's a flesh-eating beast that's considered most active during the colder months, and its presence is easily felt and smelt. It has been described as having a distinct smell of rotten decay due to its skin being ripped and unclean. It produces an overwhelming urge of greed and insatiable want. Most notably, it's not one to choose or seek after its prey. Instead, it uses its terrifying mimicry skill. I'm not sure how you say that. I don't think I've ever said that word out loud before. But it often mimics humans' voices, screams, and loved ones or anything that might entice the victim to come to it. In some cases, it's believed that the Wendigo is a spirit that can possess other humans and fill them with greed and selfishness, turning them into Wendigos as well. There's a saying in Appalachia, if you hear your name called out in the woods, no you didn't, especially at night. And this is one of the reasons. The Wendigo is a mimic. Unlike other terrifying carnivores, the Wendigo doesn't rely on pursuing his prey in order to capture or eat it. Rather, one of his creepiest traits is its ability to mimic human voices. It uses a skill to lure people and draw them away from civilization. Once they're isolated in the desolate depths of the wilderness, it attacks them and feasts on them. Some legends say the Wendigo is a emaciated figure with ashen flesh. Others describe it as a giant creature up to 15 feet tall, or as a beast that grows larger the more it eats. It may have sunken or glowing eyes and sharp yellow fingers and claws. Its lips are chewed or entirely missing because it's eaten them, which is gross. It may be hairless or have fur, and it may have pointed ears and horns or antlers like a deer. It smells of rotting flesh and usually first detected by humans by its horrible odor. So basically, it could look like anything, but it stinks. It's been said that they have extremely sharp eyesight, hearing, and sense of smell, as well as superior strength and speed in order to stalk and overpower their victims. They generally live in the woods and mountains of Canada and the United States. They can move easily through deep snow and across ice. The Wendigo is sometimes described as a spirit rather than a physical presence. In Cree mythology, for example, the Wendigo is believed to be an evil spirit that possesses humans. The spirit enters a person by biting him or her through a dream. The possessed person becomes cannibalistic or otherwise deranged or violent. Some people are believed to be more susceptible to becoming possessed by a Wendigo, including those who are greedy or gluttonous, as well as those who are suffering from hunger or starvation. The Wendigo is never satisfied with his cannibalistic urges. Obsessed with hunting for new victims, he is forever hungry until he's eating another person. Some say the story of the Wendigo is that the Wendigo was once a lost hunter. During a brutally cold winter, the man's intense hunger drove him to cannibalism. After feasting on another human's flesh, he transformed into a crazed man-beast, roaming the forest in search of more people to eat. There's a Chippewa tale that goes, one time long ago, a big Wendigo stole an Indian boy. They're saying Indian, not me. But the boy was too thin, so the Wendigo didn't eat him up right away. He traveled with the Indian boy, waiting for him till he'd get fat. The Wendigo had a knife, and he cut the boy on the hand to see if he was fat enough to eat. But the boy didn't get fat. They traveled too much. One day, they came to an Indian village, and the Wendigo sent the boy to the village to get some things for him to eat. He just gave the boy so much time to get there and back. The boy told the Indians that the Wendigo was near them and showed them his hand where the Wendigo cut him to see if he was fat enough to eat. They heard the Wendigo calling the boy. He said to the boy, "Hurry up, don't tell lies to those Indians." All of these Indians went to where the Wendigo was and cut off his legs. They went back again to see if he was dead. He wasn't dead. He was eating the juice, or marrow, from inside the bones of his own legs that were cut off. The Indigos asked the Wendigo, was there any fat on them? He said, "You bet there is. I've eaten lots of Indians. No wonder they're fat." The Indians then killed him and cut him to pieces. This was the end of the giant Wendigo. According to some legends, a shaman may be the only person who can subdue and destroy a Wendigo, using either a silver, steel, or iron bullet or dagger. Some legends, however, claim the Wendigo's heart must be cut out and melted and burned in a fire before its spirit is truly vanquished. The Wendigo legend exists in oral history of North America tribes predating Europeans' arrival in North America. Some anthropologists believe the legend developed as a cautionary tale about the importance of community to guard against greed, selfishness, and isolation. The Wendigo was a personification of cold and hunger in a time when human survival relied on banding together and sharing resources, particularly during the long, harsh winters of the northern wilderness. The legend may have also served in warning to children not to wander too far into the woods. The first known written mention of the Wendigo appears in 1636 report by Paul Lejeune, a French Jesuit missionary living among the Algonquin people in what is now Quebec. Lejeune described a woman who warns of Achin that had eaten some tribal members nearby and that would eat a great many more of them if he were not called elsewhere. A few instances of murder and cannibalism in North America were blamed on the Wendigo. These include a case in Alberta, Canada in 1879. A Cree hunter had trapped a Cree hunter and trapper named Swift Runner claimed a Wendigo spirit had entered his dreams and told him to eat his family. He was tried for murder, found guilty, and hanged for his crimes that year. Another case occurred in 1907 among the Sandy Lake First Nation community in northern Ontario. The tribal shaman Jack Fiddler and his brother Joseph Fiddler were charged with the murder of Joseph's daughter-in-law, whom they had strangled to prevent her from becoming possessed by a Wendigo. After the brothers' arrest, Jack Fiddler escaped the police and strangled himself, and Joseph Fiddler died from tuberculosis in prison in 1909. Here's an interesting part about the Wendigo story, at least I think it is. By the early 20th century, the term Wendigo psychosis was used by psychologists and missionaries to describe cultural bound syndrome among natives and First Nations, of the people whose symptoms included delusions, of becoming possessed by an evil spirit, depression, violence, a compulsion for human flesh, and in some cases, cannibalism. The syndrome was diagnosed retroactively in historical cases of cannibalism in North America. However, the existence of the syndrome is disputed by some scientists. But according to the American Psychological Association, APA, a cultural bound syndrome is a pattern of mental illness, distress, and symptoms unique to a specific ethnic or cultural population and is not conformed to standard classifications of psychiatric disorders. These conditions may also be referred to as culture-specific syndromes or cultural concepts of distress. They are not listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. These psychiatric disorders often cause unique symptoms or presentations that reflect the beliefs, values, and social structures of the culture in which they occur. They can encompass a wide range of conditions, from physical ailments to psychological disorders, and are often deeply intertwined with cultural norms, practices, and interpretations of health and illness. So basically, the belief in the Wendigo creates symptoms in people that behave like a Wendigo. So I thought that was really interesting. Along with the Wendigo psychosis, other examples of cultural-bound syndromes include susto, which is Latin American. It's a condition characterized by symptoms like a loss of appetite, sleep disturbance, and weakness believed to be caused by a frightening traumatic experience. Koro is Southeast Asian. Koro is the fear that one's genitals are retracting into the body, often associated with the sense of impending death. Oh, that one's not good. The next is Japanese. Taijin Kaio Fusho is the fear of offending or harming others through one's social awkwardness or perceived physical flaws. Well, I'm pretty socially awkward, so maybe I have that. And then the last one here is Amok. It's Southeastern Asian. It's a sudden outburst of violent or homicidal behavior, often followed by amnesia or a period of confusion. So I just thought it was kind of interesting that the cultures have their each kind of psychoses, which I'd never heard of before. But the Wendigo myth might actually represent the indigenous people's response to the horrific violence unleashed upon them by non-native people. In fact, many anthropologists believe that the concept of a Wendigo only developed after the native people had contact with the Europeans. Rewriting Apocalypse adds that some modern-day confusion about the Wendigo may have to do with certain terms getting lost in translation. One well-known mistake was traced to the compiler of a dictionary who entered the information regarding the word Wendigo and substituted the word ghoul for the appropriate word fool because he thought the native people meant ghoul. Some anthropologists also argue that the Wendigo stories, especially those involving Wendigo accusations, are linked to the stress within the Native American communities. The local tension leading up to such accusations may even be comparable to the fear that preceded the Salem witch trials. However, in the case of Native American communities, most of the stress was due to a dwindling amount of resources, not to mention the extermination of food in the area. Under those circumstances, who could blame them for having a fear of starvation? Just about the only thing scarier might be what one would do if the starvation became too much to handle. Now let's move on to skinwalkers, which are something completely different. Originating from Navajo Diné folklore, a skinwalker is a malevolent witch capable of transforming into possessing or disguising themselves as an animal. I said earlier they're also called Yi Naldushi. And the phrase translates to with it, he goes on all fours. So that's what a skinwalker is. But a person becomes a skinwalker by committing a heinous act, like killing a family member. This gives them supernatural powers, allowing them to shapeshift from human to animal at will. They often become coyotes, wolves, foxes, or bears, though they can take the form of any animal. Animals associated with witchcraft usually include tricksters such as a coyote. However, it may include other creatures, usually those associated with death and bad omens. They might also possess living animals or people and walk around in their bodies. Skinwalkers may be male or female. Several accounts of skinwalkers recall seeing animals walking on hind legs. For example, one person said, "My uncle and cousin saw a large deer on the side of the road. When they got closer, it hopped over the fence like a bipedal man." Skinwalkers were Navajo witches. While both men and women can be witches in Navajo culture, the term commonly describes men. This is unlike the other cultures where the term witch typically defines a woman. In Navajo culture, skinwalkers are often to blame when things go wrong, such as illness, misfortune, or unexplained deaths. The reason is that skinwalkers are witches who can manipulate and harm through dark magic. Therefore, when something out of ordinary or unexpected happens, like crop failures, people tend to take it to be the work of a skinwalker. Skinwalkers and other witches have long been blamed for unexpected struggles and tragedies, including sickness, drought, poor crops, and sudden deaths. Even smaller individual problems such as windstorms during dances, alienation of affection by mates, and the death of livestock, and reversal of fortune were often believed to be witches' work. I guess they couldn't take the blame for themselves, gotta blame it on a woman. Of course, like I said, the witches in Navajo are mainly men, so I guess that's not right. This was most apparent with Navajo Witch Purge of 1878, which initially evolved from a cultural response to so many people moving across and onto their lands. After a series of wars with the U.S. Army, the Navajo were expelled from their land and forced to march to Bosque Redondo, Fort Sumner, in New Mexico, in what is known as the Long Walk of the Navajo in 1864. Side note here, I'd never heard of that. I guess, where we're mainly Eastern, I hear about the Trail of Tears a lot, but I've never heard of the Long Walk of the Navajo, so it's kind of something I want to look into. There, the people suffered from bad winter, failed crops, illness, and death, reducing their numbers dramatically. After 4 years, the government finally admitted they had made a mistake, and the Navajo were allowed to return to their homeland in the Four Corners area. During these years, many of the tribe members were said to have turned to shape-shifting to escape the terrible conditions. In the meantime, the rest of the tribe was convinced that their gods had deserted them. Once the people had returned to the homeland, the conditions improved, but the dreaded skinwalkers, whom they blamed for their years on the bleak reservation, were still among them. Accusations of witchcraft and the hunting of the skinwalkers began. When someone found a collection of witch artifacts wrapped in a copy of the Treaty of 1868, the tribal members unleashed deadly consequences. The Navajo Witch Purge occurred in 1878, in which 40 suspected Navajo witches were killed to restore harmony and balance to the tribe. Part of the reason that people get skinwalkers and Wendigos confused, I think, is their traits and characteristics, which can be similar. Here are the few defining characteristics and abilities of skinwalkers. Shape-shifting. They can transform into various animals such as wolves or coyotes. They change forms depending on their needs. For example, if they need immense strength, they might become a bear. Skinwalkers assume these roles voluntarily. It's not a curse like being a werewolf. Supernatural speed. They move at incredibly fast speeds. Mimicry, I can't say that word still, I don't know how you pronounce it. They can imitate human voices or animals, often to deceive others. Mind control, they influence or control the thoughts of others. Cursing, they can cast harmful spells or curses. Physical strength, they have superhuman strength. Glowing eyes, according to legend, if you can tell you're in the presence of a skinwalker by their eyes. If you shine a light on one when they're in animal form, their eyes glow bright red. In human form, their eyes seem animal-like. So you can see the confusion there, but a skinwalker is a witch, and a Wendigo is more of a spirit or demon. People become skinwalkers in Navajo culture by committing taboo acts such as murder, often of a close relative, as part of a dark initiation into the witchery way. The transformation often involves mastering the use of dark magic, including shape-shifting and casting curses to harm others. The witchery way is a form of Navajo witchcraft that focuses on malevolent practices, contrasting with the healing and protective spiritual traditions. Those who choose the witchery way use these powers for personal gain or revenge. Navajo witches, including skinwalkers, represent the antithesis of Navajo cultural values. While community healers and cultural workers, known as medicine men and women, or by positive terms in the community's indigenous language, witches are seen as evil. performing harmful ceremonies and manipulative magic in a perversion of the good works medicine people traditionally perform. In order to practice their good works, traditional healers may learn about good and evil magic in order to protect against evil. But people who choose to become witches are seen as corrupt. Detecting a skinwalker is challenging because of their ability to shapeshift and blend in with their surroundings. However, some believe that that unusual animal behavior, such as animals acting unnaturally or with glowing eyes, can be a sign of skinwalkers. Which is why people are always posting on TikTok about them. Sometimes animals are just weird, they're not always a skinwalker. Skinwalkers may also move in unnatural, distorted ways, even when in human form. Additionally, skinwalkers may cause feelings of intense fear or unease when they are near. The legend of skinwalkers is not well understood outside of the Navajo culture, due to both the reluctance to discuss the subject with outsiders, as well as what Cherokee Nation academic Adrienne Keene says is a lack of the necessary cultural context the stories are embedded within. Traditional Navajo people are reluctant to reveal skinwalker lore to non-Navajos or to discuss it at all among those they do not trust. So I was a bit wary to do this one, but hopefully it's okay. I don't know. But skinwalker stories told among Navajo children may be complete life and death struggles that end in either skinwalker or Navajo killing the other, or partial encounter stories that end in a stalemate. Encounter stories may be composed as Navajo victory stories, with the skinwalkers approaching a hogan and being scared away. Some traditions concerning Native American monsters believe the skinwalkers are born of malevolent medicine men who abuses indigenous magic for evil. The medicine man is then given mythical powers of evil that vary from tradition to tradition, but the power of traditions mention the ability to turn into a possessed animal or person. Other traditions believe a man, woman, or child can become a skinwalker should they commit any kind of deep-seated taboo. Sometimes these witches evolve from living and respected healers or spiritual guides who later chose to use their powers for evil. The leader of the skinwalkers is usually an old man who is very powerful and a long-lived skinwalker. In Native American lore, the skinwalkers are described as being mostly animalistic, physically, even when they're in human form. They're reportedly near impossible to kill except with a bullet or a knife dipped in white ash. Though they can be either male or female, they are more often male. They walk freely among the tribe during the day and secretly transform under the cover of the night. To become a skinwalker, he or she must be initiated by a secret society that requires the evilest of deeds, the killing of a close family member, most often a sibling. After completing the task, the individual acquires supernatural powers, which gives them the ability to shapeshift into animals. They are often seen as coyotes, wolves, foxes, cougars, dogs, and bears. But they can take the shape of any animal. They then wear the skins of the animal they transform into, hence the name skinwalker. Sometimes they also wore animal skulls or antlers atop their heads, giving them more power. They chose what animal they want to turn into depending on abilities needed for a particular task, such as speed, strength, endurance, stealth, claws, teeth, etc. They may transform again if they need to escape from pursuers. Because of this, the Navajo consider it taboo for its members to wear the pelt of any predatory animal. However, sheepskin, leather, and buckskin are acceptable. It's said that in addition to being able to shapeshift, the skinwalker can also control the creatures of the night, such as wolves and owls, and make them do their bidding. Some can call up the spirits of the dead and reanimate the corpses to attack their enemies. Because of this, the Indians rarely ventured out alone. Its supernatural powers are uncanny, as they are said to run faster than a car and have the ability to jump high cliffs. Like Superman. No, I shouldn't laugh at that. They're extremely fast, agile, impossible to catch, and leave tracks larger than animals. When seen, they've been described as not quite human and not fully animal. They usually are naked, but some of them have seen the creature wearing tattered shirts or jeans. The skinwalker can take possession of the bodies of human victims if a person locks eyes with them. After taking control, the witch can make its victim do and say things that they wouldn't otherwise do or say. Once they were shapeshifted, others could tell they were not real animals because their eyes were very different from those of animals. Instead, their eyes are very human, and when light shines upon them, they turn bright red. Alternatively, their eyes look more like animals when they're in human form. Skinwalkers also have other powers, including reading others' minds, controlling their thoughts and behavior, causing disease and illness, destroying property, and even death. Those who have talked of their encounters with these evil beings describe several ways to know a skinwalker is near. They make sounds around homes, such as knocking on windows, banging walls, and scraping noises on the roof. On some occasions, they have been spied peering through windows. More often, they appear in front of vehicles in hopes of causing a serious accident. If you'll remember my Bell Witch episode, a lot of this is similar to that. Maybe the Bell Witch is a skinwalker. I don't think so. It's not in the right part of the country. But maybe it's the same kind of similar being. The skinwalker kills out of greed, anger, envy, and spite, or revenge. It also robs graves for personal wealth and collects much-needed ingredients for black magic use. These witches live on the unexpired lives of their victims, and they may continually kill or perish themselves. Today, most of these tales or sightings of the witches do not include death or injury, but are more trickster-like. Numerous people have told stories of swift animals running alongside their vehicles, matching their speed. After a short period, however, they run off into the wilderness. Along the way, these animals sometimes turn into a man who sometimes bangs on the hood. But these are so-called skinwalkers don't really sound anything like the original legend. If a skinwalker is a witch, I think that's scary. And if a skinwalker is just a trickster, not so scary. So maybe it's two different things. Who knows? So that's the difference between skinwalkers and Wendigos. From where they're located, I would think that Wendigos would be more apt to be found in the Appalachian region. But have they been seen here? Either of them? So far as I can tell, skinwalkers shouldn't be in this area, whatever. So whatever people are seeing, if they're seeing anything, is most likely a Wendigo. There are a lot of stories about sightings in Appalachia, but of course I couldn't verify any of them. Just basically some random people on the internet seeing things, but nothing official. Also, as I mentioned in another episode, if you've heard a fox or coyote at night, or even a bobcat, they definitely can sound human. So I wonder if a lot of the sounds they hear aren't just one of those animals. But if you look into the Algonquin people, they don't come down much further than the New England area. That doesn't mean their monsters can't move around. So if something like that exists, it very well could be in the Appalachian Mountains. The mountains are old and there are a lot of hiding places. So do Wendigos or skinwalkers exist? Like I say with everything, I'm a bit skeptical, but I have an open mind. Also, if these are native legends and stories, even if they did exist, would they make themselves known to me, a white girl? Maybe, maybe not. I can say, though, with a bit of certainty that they don't exist in Appalachia unless they've wandered off course. There may be some Wendigo in the northern Appalachian Mountains, but I don't think they reach down to the area that is considered Appalachia. That doesn't mean that there aren't other creatures out there that can get you at night, though. So if you go out at night, be careful. And remember, if you hear your name, no you didn't. I hope this episode wasn't a letdown, since they're not in our area, but I hope you still enjoyed it. As always, thank you for listening. Follow me on social medias under Poison Appalachia. Check out my website. Like and rate me on whatever podcast platform you listen to if you can. And tell your friends about me. Thank y'all for your support as always. I really appreciate y'all. Talk to y'all next week.